Hello and welcome to the Systematic Podcast. I'm Patrick Laughlin. Today we're going to talk about our new military division at our company. Really excited about this. We have two fantastic leaders for this division on with us. I have Jake Brown and Daniel Pierce, and we're going to walk through the advantages of having military veterans in your manufacturing plant. So to kick it off, Jake, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us your background, and what you bring to the table.
Hey everyone, I'm Jake Brown. I currently, alongside Dan, lead the military division at Systematic. My background is I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps as a manpower and administration officer. So I have a lot of the administrative background supporting my transition into recruiting. And then specifically with recruiting as well, I also am a certified professional resume writer. So I have some insights as well that I contribute to helping veterans, for example, find opportunities in the manufacturing sector.
Awesome. Dan, I'll kick it off to you next.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Pat. So echoing Jake, I'm Dan Pierce, and I work with Jake here in the military division at Systematic Business Consulting. A little bit of background about me. I joined the Marine Corps straight out of high school. I was a helicopter mechanic, and I was a crewman on CH-53s and VH-60s for the Presidential Helicopter Squadron. I loved that. I got a pretty good hand on maintenance before I went into college at Virginia Tech. I graduated and then came back in the Marines as an engineer officer, where I wrapped up 10 years. We're really excited about what we're doing here at the military division with SBC, and we're looking to support veterans and bring them to our clients, meshing some opportunities from military to manufacturing.
Yeah, they've already had a really rocket start to this. We've already placed multiple candidates at different facilities across the U.S. So really excited on how this is going. So with that, Dan, let's start with you, man. What makes veterans good fits for manufacturing?
Hey, that's a great question. I've got to say there's just so many different things that they bring to the table, not just hard skills, but soft skills. I mean, one, they're trainable. We know this because they've gone through some significant training. A lot of guys go through not just basic, like the world understands from movies and media, right? You get yelled at, you run around, sure. But then you go on to sometimes a year's worth of technical training in your MOS before you even begin to do it. And then from there, whether it's 4 to 20 years of time in service, you're accumulating additional on-the-job training and additional advanced schoolings that is truly unparalleled when you look at the civilian world. So you got training, adaptability. They work in austere environments. They come out of these places where they're not afraid to work, not just hard, but in sometimes hard environments. And manufacturing sometimes isn't always the best kind of environment to work in. So we find that to be a natural pairing as well. I mean, the list goes on, not just the hard skills, but the soft skills. And we really find that employers value that.
Yeah, as general manager, I can personally attest. I mean, we've obviously hired a ton of veterans here at Systematic. I'm a veteran myself, but we made Inc. 5000 this past year, and a lot of that is due to the rapid growth. We had guys that had zero experience coming out of the military and recruiting and training them up, because obviously we got a lot of fast skills. You got to drink from a fire hose a lot of the time. So I think that's incredibly valuable. I think that kind of leads to my next question for you. What kind of roles do you think veterans specifically excel in?
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity in manufacturing. And I think it would be a disservice to say that we can silo our veterans into any one industry or vertical. I think that they can just perform well in about anything that they want to do. But we see a really great demand from our clients asking for individuals to serve in maintenance supervisory positions, production supervisory positions. Operations management is another key inflow from our veterans to manufacturing, as well as maintenance. I mean, a lot of us have these hard skills that we've developed from aviation maintenance, ship maintenance, vehicle maintenance that translates very well. So not just, again, the hard skills that we've picked up or that our veterans are bringing to the table, but it's a lot of those soft skills in leadership too that they seem to perform well in. Project management, engineering, the list goes on again. I mean, I can't really say that there's not a position that they wouldn't truly excel in, especially over time.
Yeah, I haven't seen many veterans actually scoff at doing night shift either. It's yeah, I'm just in a lot of duty. That's like, oh, that's just normal. That's just part of life. Jake, let me give one to you, man. How can veterans translate their skill set to be applicable to manufacturing? What advice would you give to these veterans?
Yeah, I think a lot of veterans really just haven't considered manufacturing as a career field, but there are a lot of ways in which your skill set really translates well into this kind of environment. And I think the way that as veterans, as you're looking for job opportunities, the way to appropriately translate that skill set is to focus on primarily those that technical expertise that you have, particularly in maintenance. There are a lot of MOSs in the Navy and the Marine Corps, across every branch really, that you get a very strong mechanical and electrical skill set coming out of. And those sort of things are absolutely relevant to a lot of manufacturing environments. And companies are going to be very interested in exploring that experience and that background that you have. Some other key things as well when you're building your resume, for example, or you're talking to employers about these opportunities, you need to try to make sure that you're staying away from all of the military jargon and yet that you're communicating your background in plain English as much as possible. It often helps. I recommend this to everyone to have a non-military member or a civilian look at your resume and just ask, hey, what does this mean? What does this mean? And make sure that you're preparing that resume to be read by people who just don't understand necessarily what all of the acronyms and all the different phrases mean on your resume. So definitely using plain English is key. And then finally, I would also recommend just focusing on kind of those key achievements, right? I think too many veterans rely on their soft skills. So they'll say things like, well, I have leadership or I have discipline. And that's something that is 100% true. But if you're relying simply on soft skills to sell yourself, you're really not going to be standing out from the crowd. The reality is that many job seekers self-describe as team players, as team leaders, and things like that. And the reality is you just need to show how your leadership resulted in measurable successes. So a lot of veterans I know have achieved incredible things, and really just identifying what those are as you're talking to employers, not being afraid, not being too humble to explain those successes, that will help you succeed in terms of explaining your background to civilian employers.
Perfect. Yeah, Dan, why don't you tell us then? I mean, kind of as the account manager for this division who's worked with a lot of different clients, what would you kind of tell or explain to transition military members? What do they need to know about manufacturing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's hard to know what you don't know, obviously. And what I would say is what Jake mentioned there too is just reaching out to people and have informational interviews. I think that there's a lot of gap in knowledge about the different opportunities afforded to individuals in manufacturing as a whole. I think when you talk to veterans, they don't necessarily consider it as their next career step, just given that they don't understand the many different parts that go into making a product. And I mean that quite literally, not as the components, but the people. So there is just a huge range of opportunity and experiences in business that you can do here in manufacturing. So have those informational interviews with people in manufacturing, find a mentor, reach out, and I'll just, again, plug us here. Talk to Jake, talk to Pat, talk to me. If you're a veteran, you're transitioning out and you're curious to know a little bit about what's going on in manufacturing, just ask someone, get on a call and have a conversation. That's the number one thing I could recommend to a veteran is know what is out there by having those conversations. And you'll be surprised. I mean, it's more than just flipping buttons on the assembly line. You know, there's quite a bit that goes into it. And it's a very exciting field and opportunity.
Yeah, I think even personally, like always love the opportunity to talk to another veteran. I think it's great when they reach out to us on LinkedIn because it's like, yeah, I would be happy to help you. I don't care if you use this or not. I mean, just getting that opportunity to kind of give some advice after being in the civilian world for a little bit it's really crucial, and it's great to help in that transitioning period. So with that, do you think there's like most military members know about manufacturing or understand the types of roles that are out there?
I think there's a gap, right? And one of the things that I don't think many people understand is how many industries there are. When we think of manufacturing, it's easy to think about like big automotive manufacturing, right? But if you look around your house, everything got there because a lot of people were very dedicated to the cause, to the food you eat, to the things you're sleeping on, everything in your house. You sit on a couch, someone manufactured that. You know what I mean? So the industry is incredibly broad. There's a ton of different niches, for one. Two, a lot of people don't recognize the fact that many of these plants are operating in a 24/7 capacity. That means there's 3 shifts that you have to man and fill. So if you're open to even taking an off shift, that can be a really easy way into manufacturing because a lot of people don't necessarily want that. But if you're coming out of the military You're used to standing duty at all sorts of weird hours. And also, here's something, you get paid overtime, right? So 8 hours a day in manufacturing as a maintenance technician, right? In the Marines, you were 12 on, 12 off. You were day crew, night crew. You were there until the job was done. You were deployed. There was no additional pay and incentive. If you take a role at roughly $30 an hour as a maintenance technician, you may think, okay, that's 60,000 a year, end of the year, 40 hours a week, but then you get paid time and a half. When you add all that up, you can be breaking into 70, 80, 90 if you're looking at that $30 to $35 per hour range. So we're not just talking about the opportunities in the various industries and niches, but also in being compensated fairly for the amount of time that you're putting to your new position. So manufacturing, whether you're coming straight out after 4 years or after 20, provides so many different avenues for you to have personal growth, professional growth, and social mobility. It is a just hierarchy where you can enter and find yourself growing. A lot of companies like to hire internally. So, I mean, the sky's the limit in manufacturing, and I encourage veterans to consider this as their next career step.
Yeah, I don't remember making a single dime for standing the 3 a.m. watch on the quarter deck and then I think I was thanked with doing sweepers in the morning. That's about it. Now with that, all right, so obviously incredible opportunities. Jake, let's go to you, man. What should veterans do right on their resume to kind of help translate this? I know you touched on this earlier, but I think there's some, we all go through TAPS class and it has some usefulness. They kind of send you some websites that can help, but as a resume writer, how do they translate that experience?
Yeah, so this is definitely something that I think is really important, and oftentimes just veterans aren't as prepared as they think they are. Exactly what you mentioned, we go through these transition seminars or TAPS classes where they might, touch on it for a few minutes, but it really just isn't a sufficient resume for such a critical part of the job search. And I personally view the resume as kind of the keystone of your job search. Is so critical. It's that document that everyone's going to be looking at, and it's a snapshot of who you are as a person and what value you provide to a business. So it absolutely is crucial to get it right. Now, what does right mean? I think that's the way I'm going to answer this question. What does right mean? I'm going to give two quick things. Number one, as a veteran, you need to use a well-written professional resume for your job search. What that traditionally means is something that is 1 to 2 pages long. It's clearly organized. It's traditionally formatted in reverse chronological order. So starting with your most recent experience at the top, and it focuses on those quantifiable achievements I sort of touched on earlier, those measurable successes. It also has to be spelling and grammar error free. If you need a starting point, and I think this is so huge just to give people a place to begin with, you can just Google Harvard University's resume and cover letter guide. There are plenty of great examples in there. Those resumes are so much better than a lot of what is out there right now. And it can kind of get you started on how to build your resume from scratch in a much more presentable, professional manner. That's where I'd recommend people start. Again, keeping those core aspects in mind. And then additionally, I'm also a resource as well. More than happy to help out veterans kind of clean up their resumes. And it's also a service we help out with all of our candidates as well in the military division.
So what are the most common mistakes you see? I mean, obviously, I think we've all seen like the 4-page resume, the 7-page resume. But besides that, what else have you seen out there has been some major triggers?
Yeah, the biggest trend for veterans is definitely the length. We have a tendency to be very wordy with our resumes. And for whatever reason, it's either because that's taught to us or we just do it inherently. I see a lot of them where they list like every single duty station, right? Or they want to make sure there's no date gaps, sort of like a fitness report would have. We need to make sure there's no date gaps, which is important. But that doesn't mean that you need to necessarily break out every single different job title that you had. Again, the key statistic is that you get around 7 seconds for your resume. So resumes are not read, they are scanned. So you need to keep it concise and as relevant as possible. I think the thought process behind wanting to put all of our experience in is that, well, if I just list everything that I've ever done and all of these collateral duties or these sort of secondary skills that I kind of have, an employer may see that and maybe want to give me a shot. But in reality, what happens is that an employer opens that resume up. It's way too long. It's very wordy. It's a lot of irrelevant information, and they choose to just pass on the resume. So really, you're going to achieve more results. You're going to get more interviews if you keep it concise and relevant relevantly formatted resume that focuses on those hard skills. I think some of the quick examples are that if you're applying for like a manufacturing operations manager position, you don't need to list your firearm qualifications, and I see that on a lot of veteran resumes. Or a lot of people include their hobbies sections. Most of the time, that's irrelevant information. Just keep it concise, keep it relevant, keep it to the point, bulletize things, and hiring managers are going to respond much better to that sort of resume. So.
Yeah, so you're saying that it's not critical to be an expert in pistol when you're applying for a maintenance tech position.
Correct.
Great stuff. So let's shift roles here and talk about maintenance technicians. Dan, give me real quick, what are maintenance technicians? What have you seen them making like cross country nowadays?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad range. Definitely depends on skill set as well as the industry with which you're entering. Some larger companies have bigger budgets. Some smaller companies have smaller budgets that don't provide as much pay. However, we have to look at things holistically: quality of life, hours to be worked, benefits, etc. So when we talk about pay, we want to keep that whole compensation in mind. But broadly speaking, we're seeing maintenance technicians gauging somewhere between about $30 an hour up to about $35 per hour when they enter the industry coming out of the military with those skill sets and maintenance. However, that is not the end. We've seen maintenance in some especially critical industries making upwards of 40. And I would say that it is definitely a path to attain a lot of income doing something that you love. If you love turning wrenches, and there's a lot that you can learn and continue to apply.
Yeah, I would say some of the common ones I've seen: production supervisor, maybe assistants, operations manager type roles. Do you know roughly what those are going for?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a moving target as well, but I would say 70 to 90 is about right from what I've seen in my experience. You can really start cresting into 100K, 110, 120, but we usually see those typically reserved for an operations manager who's had a few years of experience in the industry. That's not to say that you can't get that. Those positions are open, and it certainly also comes down to knowing the right people, and recruiters can help you out with that.
And obviously, maintenance is going to be a big target, right? So working on aircraft, working on ships, working on tanks, right? For those kind of members who are in maintenance type positions, what area would you kind of tell them to focus on or prepare for to be ready for these interviews and for writing the resume and applications, things like that?
Right. So manufacturing is really having a strong push right now in the United States towards automation and increasing efficiency with the use of things like PLCs and robotics. In the military, we do have some of those things, and there is some exposure to it. However, as you transition out, you want to become more aware of what manufacturing technology is being utilized currently, and that takes a little bit of research. So in maintenance, in manufacturing, the have and have nots that I typically see are the individuals who have PLC troubleshooting experience. So if you are transitioning out of the military, you were an electronics technician, a Navy nuke, a aircraft mechanic, I would begin digging into a little bit about what kind of manufacturing technology is out there. Who are these PLC makers? What and how are they being utilized? And then begin to start digging into that. There's plenty of stuff out there on YouTube. There's lots of different just courses on LinkedIn Learning. There's tons of content, and there's no reason to be ignorant to the fact of what manufacturing is doing if you're going after that job. Just know that some of the higher pay is reserved for individuals with certification and advanced schooling in these automation and PLCs. But that's certainly something you need to be aware of if you're transitioning out and joining as a manufacturing technician.
Why should veterans be interested in manufacturing?
I think, one, you get to make things in America for Americans, and I love that. I think that we're adding back to, and you find a purpose-driven career that gives you an opportunity to give back in a capacity where others will get to enjoy and buy and use the things that you make. I think that's powerful. I think that you continue a bit of your service in a different way in strengthening the United States and our own self-reliance. Manufacturing is a huge part of our economy, and being able to join in that career field, I think will help with that sense of belonging and purpose. And we find that a lot of veterans are looking for that when they transition out. So it's a natural pairing to move into that. But aside from that, I would say certainly the opportunity, the benefits, the work schedules, and the compensation. They're all right there as far as reasons as to why you should consider manufacturing.
Yeah, Jake, do you have anything to add on to that?
I would say that uh, manufacturing in itself tends to actually pay higher than a lot of other employment opportunities out there. And as veterans, sometimes we sort of box ourselves in to certain roles. I think one of the things that I see very commonly is sort of law enforcement, and maybe it's Marines in particular, but a lot of veterans think that, oh, well, I have to do one of three things. I have to get my PMP, become a project manager. I have to become a consultant and go to grad school and do all this stuff, or I'm going to become a police officer. Those are all totally fine professions, but there's so much more out there. And it's interesting, and sort of like what Dan mentioned, these are very engaging positions, very exciting mission sets that the companies have, and you are overall supporting a fantastic, business. So.
Yeah, I think to add on that, the other one was government contracts. It seems like a lot of people are like, okay, I got to stay in the government realm. I got to go be a contractor and basically come work back at the same place I was just working, but maybe a little better hours and better pay. But definitely we do work with some military contractors, which is great, but there is a lot of opportunities out there all over the United States too. You don't have to be located near a military base anymore. So with that, Jake, I'll kick to you first. What has been your favorite story for military to manufacturing placements?
Yeah, I was thinking about how I was going to answer this question, and honestly, of the several that we've had so far, it's always really inspiring to help someone who's in need of a job. It's less of, there's some situations where you're helping candidates who are currently employed, and they're on their way up. They're like, hey, I'm looking for a new job, looking for a new position that is going to give me more leadership, more growth, better pay, and things like that. And then there's times where you're able to help someone who's like, hey man, I need a job. And so that's sort of the kind of experience that of the placements that I've had. Those are the ones that inspire me the most. I feel like I'm making the most difference when we help someone who's really in need. And so that's why I love recruiting. Those are my favorite kind of stories.
Dan, let's kick it to you next, man. What do you got?
Yeah, right there with Jake. But my favorite, I think, are those seamless transitions. And I've had two now where I've gotten a maintenance manager who was on terminal leave. They were still technically in the military, accepted an offer with the client, and no lapse in their pay and very similar compensation to what they were making. The second one had done 15 years in the Navy, and same thing, on terminal leave. We got them in there for an interview, and they're accepting. They'll be starting here hopefully by the end of the month. So that's always my favorite, is just to get those guys while they're transitioning out and help them find it, give their family some ease of mind, and set them up with a new career.
That's awesome. So what roles do you think are not quite a great fit straight out of the military? So obviously we talked about things that really work well. Would you be saying that they should probably avoid?
That's a good question. I think there's naturally some positions that require experience in the industry and experience in the field to attain. I think that veterans can do, and they are doing just about everything in manufacturing that is available to them. But I think it would be wrong to say, yeah, just go ahead and shoot for the director level. You did 4 years as a maintenance technician. Plant manager sounds good. Like we got to temper expectations, right? So if you're transitioning out, just know that some of these are going to be pathway positions that will get you into those roles of greater responsibility and compensation. But we also have to recognize that civilian counterparts for either 4 or 20 years are operating in these manufacturing industries and building their credibility and experience. So just keep in mind, as you transition, there are opportunities, but just don't think you're going to take the top spot because you were the guide in boot camp. It just doesn't quite work like that,
Yeah, I think kind of transitioning into that. Obviously, if you start at a more, I wouldn't even say intro level, because obviously they're bringing a ton of experience, so they're not going to be paid intro level fees a lot of times. But with that upper mobility, I mean, what have you seen with manufacturers? How do they value military members? How do they value veterans? And how have you seen kind of career growth paths for those individuals?
Absolutely. So maintenance is a perfect example, and one that I like to use quite often. Jake and I just placed a maintenance manager in the city of Charlotte last month. This individual left the Navy after a period of 6 years, as a Navy nuclear machinist mate. They went into, I want to say, about 5 years of maintenance technician, field service technician before finding an opportunity where they could utilize all those additional skill sets and understandings of manufacturing in the civilian sector, and then apply their leadership experience that they've gained in the military to a maintenance management role. And employers do value that fact that during those 6 years in service, they learned not just from the schoolhouse on the job training, but also as a E5, E6, or an O2, O3, you begin to pick up that progressive leadership experience that will pay dividends down the road when you become that maintenance supervisor, maintenance manager, operations manager, or production manager. So yes, it is valued, it is recognized, but just like in my previous answer, sometimes it does take a little bit of time to get there.
So, Jake, let me throw this up to you. Why should veterans work with recruiters? I mean, obviously, a lot of us worked with recruiters on the way in. We're like, man, Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself. But with that same thought process, why should they work with recruiters coming out of the military?
Yeah, such a great question, Pat. And I love recruiting. I think there's so many good reasons to work with recruiters. Number one, we have a large network of opportunities. So working with recruiters saves you from having to go out and necessarily find your own job for yourself. A lot of times recruiters can have opportunities that you might be a good fit for. And a lot of military candidates, like we said, we have open and existing roles that we may have that could be a really strong fit for you even right now, save you a lot of time on the job search. Some other reasons as well. Working with recruiters saves you from having to establish a relationship with an employer to get their attention. So if you think about the statistics, right, the average job posting gets around 200 applicants on average. And a lot of those resumes just aren't getting read. You need something that can help you stand out from the crowd. And that's what recruiters do. That's what recruiters can help you with is we've got an established contract with those employers, and we can make sure that your resume is actually getting read, your info is actually received, and we get you positive or negative feedback one way or the other. We're going to get you some kind of response rather than the typical experience, which is just being ghosted. I know a lot of people have had that similar experience. So a lot of good reasons to work with recruiters. I think the other a couple other reasons as well would be that we can also help with interview preparation, resume updates and things like that, as well as kind of offer negotiation and things that maybe candidates are not so confident in. As recruiters, we're with you every step of the way, and facilitating the entire process is something we excel in. So there are a lot of good reasons. And finally, I would say that it's also completely free.
That is always a bonus, completely free coming through there. So with that, kind of to both you guys, but I'll start with you really on this, Jake. I mean, what have you seen as far as job search for veterans right now? What's the outlook look like? What's the outlook look like for 2024? What are you guys seeing?
That's a good question. I think one of the important things to keep in mind is getting ahead of the curve is important. In 2023, the average job search time increased to 5 months, which is a very, very long time to go without pay. So getting ahead of this job search curve is critical for veterans, making sure you have your ducks in a row, you're networking as early as possible, that you're thinking outside of the box as well. And really, I think the key is not self-eliminating from certain career fields. So one of the things we've seen, for example, is that veterans can really excel in sales roles. For example, they can excel in production leadership positions. They can excel in logistics without even having that direct background or having done that as their MOS. You have so many opportunities that are open to you, so don't self-eliminate. I think where the specific opportunities are in 2024, I know sort of is maybe a little bit biased to see this in manufacturing, but we're seeing some huge growth in specific fields. Construction is going up. There's a lot of different industries that are growing. They're going to be looking for people. They're going to be looking for qualified maintenance professionals. They're going to be looking for production leadership. And all sorts of other positions along the way. Everyone needs sales guys, right? If you have a product and you're selling it, you need a good salesman. And so there are so many opportunities within manufacturing, and keeping an eye on this sector and specifically will do veterans a lot of good leading into 2024.
So Dan, I'll kick to you. I think you even posted something yesterday about this. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, with roughly 600,000 positions open in manufacturing in the United States currently, we see that there is a great need, and that's going to continue. I think I saw a figure that there'll be like 1 million jobs open in manufacturing in like 2030 something. Bottom line, there is opportunity. However, we have to be cognizant of the timing as well. And I'm talking from right now. If you're viewing this video, it's the last week of November. Historically, companies aren't truly very engaged in the hiring process in the last 2 months of the year. That's a pretty slow time. People are out on vacation. So I guess what I want to say is don't lose heart. If you're applying right now, it's a very difficult time across the board. But I just got off the phone with a prospective, hopefully a client here, before we jumped on this call, and they said we're gearing up in January. We're really going to make a push. That's a busy season. We really need to get some people in here, and we're looking at engineers and we're looking at veterans, right? And this was a call specifically talking about veterans. This is positions in engineering, or positions in maintenance and production. There is just so much that can be had in manufacturing. Just know that timing is going to be important. So if you are on your way out, if you're in the middle of transition, and you're a transitioning service member, there's no such thing as starting too early. Once you sign your papers, once you know your date, get on the phone, start connecting with people, start building those relationships, and establish yourself a pipeline familiarity with the potential employer. So when that time comes, when it's time to hire and start getting people onboarded again, likely in January, we're ready.
Yeah, I think looking at it from a 1,000-foot perspective on it, I think there's a huge gap in the labor market, right? So there's not enough people currently in the workforce to fill all these open roles that are coming in, especially in 2024. And to bridge that skill gap, I mean, it takes a long time to train people. You can take a military veteran who has maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience working in a maintenance type role. And more often than not, they can be plug and play for a lot of these roles. It might just take us, it's a significantly shorter ramp up time. So I think seems like a great time for veterans getting out to transition to these type of roles because the need is there and automation isn't catching up fast enough to fill those different positions. So that's exciting stuff for coming out. So yeah, definitely hit up these two guys as far as that goes. Jake, let me throw it back to you, man. What does Systematic offer veterans?
Yeah, specifically at Systematic, we have basically every branch of the military represented within our company. So we really excel in helping employers understand your military background and its relevance for a given role. Specifically also within the military division that Dan and I run, that's our whole mission. I mean, we are here to support veterans and find them roles in manufacturing. We're supporting our clients in finding the right talent, and that's a mission that we've succeeded in several times over already. And it's something that really drives me. And so that's the true quality that Systematic offers is having that understanding and that specialty within the military division.
Now, to kind of cap this off, how can they utilize and leverage social media and things like that to kind of help with job search, help connect with you guys or whatever else from there?
Yeah, to me, this is important. This is kind of the next steps. Like, okay, I've got this great information. What next? Well, kind of a shameless pitch here for myself and Dan and Pat as well. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We would love to chat with veterans about what opportunities we have and to establish your network and to help grow our own networks as well. Building a strong LinkedIn profile is not just the only aspect of social media, but it's important to know that a lot of positions are placed through networking, right? And that's absolutely a critical part of the job search that you should be leveraging. Use the power of the internet to connect with people. Don't be afraid of it. And don't necessarily lock yourself into sort of the traditional methods of just direct applying until you burn out. There's a much better way to find a position, and that's through networking, talking to people. One of the best bits of advice that I got when I was transitioning out of the military was of course, treat it like a full-time job. Treat the job search as if it is your full-time job. But one of the things that goes along with that is that everyone should know that you're job searching. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you're missing out on, for example, a huge network of professionals. You can expand it across other social media profiles, but everyone should know, especially if you're transitioning military, that you were looking for the right fit so you can take advantage of that network of people who are looking to hire.
So what you're saying is if you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you come out of the military, I know I didn't coming out of there.
Yeah.
The first 3 people they should add is us. They should pretty much go on
Absolutely.
there, add us right away and say, hey, I'm interested in manufacturing. I want to join in. So with that, we will definitely plug down below or up above, depending on what platform we're going out on, the LinkedIn profiles for Dan and Jake. With that, let's do some parting shots. Dan, any last minute things you want to add?
Yeah, I think that we are both equally, Jake and I and Pat, we appreciate everything here and the support with what we're doing here in MilDiv. Well, we are just so excited with this, and we're loving the opportunity to work with our veterans and place them in manufacturing. So even if you're just looking at getting out and you want to talk about opportunities, would love to have that conversation. And if you're a manufacturer and you want to get some veterans in your workplace, you know who to talk to. We'd love to help make that happen.
Jake, I kick it over to you.
No, nothing else for me. I appreciate you facilitating this, Patrick, and yeah, just echoing what Dan says as well. That's what we do. We're matchmakers. We connect talent with hiring managers. So reach out to us.
Yeah, systematicbc.com, Systematic Business Consulting. You can find us on LinkedIn. Make sure you follow our socials. We're also on Twitter, Facebook. We're going to have this on our YouTube channel as well. So there's plenty of ways to connect with us, reach out to us, and get some highly qualified veterans into your manufacturing plants. If you are an HR manager or president and you're looking for some quality talent, hit us up there. As well as if you are transitioning military member, we would love to have you reach out to us. We can help you along, especially in that pretty difficult transition process as you're coming out, figuring out what to do next. We can maybe provide some quality guidance to help you from there. So thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you guys next time.